All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Planning Policy Commission. We'll call this meeting to order, and it currently is 6:32 p.m. Tonight's meeting is a hybrid meeting. The Planning Policy Commission is in person, but staff or members of the public may be attending virtually or in person. Stephen, do we have a quorum this evening?
Chair Voice, yes, you have a quorum tonight. Commissioners Mulbrew and Matthews are excused.
All right. Excellent. You may notice we have some new shiny commissioners to share with you. So I want to introduce Commissioner Adair, Commissioner Millender-Irwin, as well as Commissioner Olener. And I should note we also have Commissioner Zakharoff joining us virtually this evening. Just do a quick question. Commissioner Adair, what is your favorite restaurant in Issaquah? Okay. Yes, there are a lot of great restaurants, and make sure you guys push your buttons on so we can see the red. That'll indicate you are live.
So 12th Avenue Cafe for the record.
12th Avenue Cafe is great. I love getting breakfast around town. Commissioner Millender-Irwin, what is your favorite thing to do on a Saturday in Issaquah?
Oh my goodness. I have to say, going to Costco. It's truly an excursion, and you find something new and interesting, and I love to shop, so it's a fun thing to do, Costco.
Yes, and we love Costco, obviously. Their headquarters are here, so great plug for Costco. Commissioner Olener, what have you found most exciting about being an Issaquah resident?
I think the proximity to trails, access to civic and community facilities, and having a fantastic hospital nearby is really nice for those of us who've used the hospital more than once.
I was going to say, Commissioner Krass could probably attest to that.
I raised my hand.
And we'll pass these two because they're old hat. But I didn't want to pass up Stephen. Stephen, who do you think's the most difficult commissioner on the PPC? No, I'm just kidding. We ran out of time. We don't have to worry. Yeah, I know.
Plead the fifth, Commissioner.
Okay. Well, thank you. And again, we just want to welcome our new commissioners. It's great to have you guys with us. We're looking forward to working with you guys. And yeah, let's begin. So I did want to make a quick announcement regarding the public hearing. So the public hearing for the middle housing amendments will now be March 27th. Tonight, we'll be holding a regular discussion to review the latest amendments and discuss questions from city staff. If anyone is attending tonight's meeting to provide public comment on that project, you can still provide public comment. That will be considered by the commission, but the public hearing will actually be the next meeting. So please come and attend and provide your testimony then. So we'll move on right now to some housekeeping, which is the approval of minutes. What we have before us this evening is the February 27th Planning Policy Commission meeting minutes. All of them were provided in your agenda packets. Are there any corrections or concerns by the commissioners? Okay. Looking for Katya, nothing there. Hearing none, those meeting minutes are approved. So right now we will hold general public comment. And before I read a long list of duties, let's just find out if we have anyone that would like to make public comment.
Chair Stephen is graciously grabbing the public comment list, but it does look like we may have someone in the room who wishes to speak. And then we do have a virtual attendee. And so I guess we could ask if they wanted to raise their hand.
Excellent. Yes, okay. So we do have, okay. This is my part. So we do have public comments this evening. They may be made in person or virtually, but for all those who would like to speak, we do ask that you speak clearly, pause frequently. We ask that you state your name before speaking. And if you are attending virtually, we do ask that you mute your microphone when you're not speaking. And if you're having any technical issues, try joining the meeting using a different device, such as a smartphone or tablet. You can use the call-in information in the meeting invite to call in as well. We do accept phone calls. Public comments are an important part of the public process. We take them seriously, and they are factored into the decisions that we make. Comments may be general or related to the topics we are discussing this evening. We do ask that you please limit your comments to 5 minutes or less. Okay. Anyone who would like to speak?
Nancy Davidson is raising her hand in the room.
Okay, great. Good evening. My name's Nancy Davidson. I'm a resident of Issaquah, living in Old Town on Bush Street. And the reason I'm here to talk to you, I will be testifying next meeting as well, is to primarily get the new commissioners up to speed on kind of how the community is feeling about this middle housing issue. And this is primarily addressed by the legislature to bring more housing into areas that do not have big HOAs stopping them from happening. And so that primarily will affect Issaquah, Old Town, and Squaw Mountain. Having lived in both of those areas, I can tell you, we have middle housing in both of those areas. Squaw Mountain has duplexes. They don't have any triplexes, but there are middle houses and ADUs on Squaw Mountain. Similarly, in Old Town, you'll find several duplexes, triplexes, and other kinds of middle housing, most of which are constructed on one lot. The reason I'm concerned is there's a push by some to potentially increase the middle housing from 2 units per parcel to go to 4. And by doing that, what we're doing is increasing the densities in areas that have been identified by the city as lacking parking. They have stormwater systems that are falling apart and no longer capable of meeting all the increased impervious areas. They also have issues associated with potentially sanitary sewer. And the other thing that most of us, at least in Old Town, are concerned about is the character of this neighborhood. This town is very unique, especially the Old Town area. It has been preserved kind of as a classic area of old homes that were here back in the early 1900s. We don't want that area to start looking like Bellevue, Kirkland, and other areas which have taken the houses down, come in and built 2 or 4 units as either a duplex or a multifamily house. ADUs, there's lots of them in Old Town. You just have to look around or know neighbors. Some people have split housing. But our concern is the administration is moving forward with the 2 units per parcel. And we encourage you to do that. And while there may be some issues with parking, I'm sure Valerie will do a great job explaining all of that. If there's any way you can keep requiring parking, because let me tell you, there is not a lot of parking available on these old streets. Many people do not have driveways. They have ADUs instead. Those ADUs with families living there do not have the parking that's needed. So I encourage you to try and see what you can do to get more parking in Old Town on those lots as they redevelop, but also to stay with the 2 unit per parcel. Thank you very much.
Chair, the virtual attendee doesn't wish to make comments.
Okay. We appreciate those comments. Nancy? All right, we're going to move to regular business, and our first item of regular business is to discuss the Title 18 Middle Housing Amendments. Valerie Porter, our Associate Planner, will be presenting tonight. So Valerie, when you are ready, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Voice. Hello, everyone. My name is Valerie Porter. I'm an associate planner with the Community Planning and Development Department. And tonight we're going to talk about middle housing. So we're actually going to kind of continue our discussion that we had at the last meeting. I posed 2 policy questions. There we go. So the administration is needing some direction on design standards that will be applied to single family and middle housing structures. And then we also like to get your feedback on the amount of open space that should be required for courtyard and cottage developments. So because we have some new commissioners here tonight, I thought it would be good to briefly just go over some of the main requirements for House Bill 1110 and 1337. And so why are we talking about middle housing, and what is it? So in 2023, the state passed legislation, House Bill 1110, also known as a middle housing bill, which requires many cities in Washington to allow a broader range of housing types, specifically middle housing types, in areas that previously allowed detached single-family homes. So the intent is to increase density as well as the housing stock. So middle housing is a term used to describe a type of housing. So over the years, there's been a lot of detached single-family homes and multifamily, large-scale multifamily, but nothing really in between. So that's how you get this term, middle housing. Middle housing are buildings that are compatible in scale, form, and character with single-family homes and consist of 2 or more units. The important concept about middle housing is the scale. The scale is in line with single-family homes, or it's multi-unit buildings that are in line with single-family homes. So middle housing can be a variety of building types. So that could be a duplex, triplex, all the way up to sixplexes, stacked flats, townhomes, cottage, and courtyard housing. House Bill 1110 establishes requirements by 3 tiers. Each tier is based on a city's population as well as their location, and Issaquah is a Tier 2 city. And so Issaquah is required to allow 2 dwelling units on 1 lot and for all lots zoned residential. And in order to get that increased density, you have to build a middle housing building type. And so a detached single-family structure is not considered a middle housing type. So for those who have these large lots and they're like, I got a little room, I can throw a detached single-family home next to that, no. In order to get that increased density, you have to build a middle housing type. For lots that are within quarter-mile walking distance of a major transit stop, or they set aside at least 1 unit as an affordable unit, they will be allowed to have 4 units on 1 lot. The city is also required to allow 6 of the middle housing building types in all residential zones. In the intent of the bill, we are required to streamline the review process and ensure that our middle housing regulations are not more restrictive than those for single-family homes. In addition to addressing House Bill 1110, we'll also be updating the land use code to address House Bill 1337, which is for accessory dwelling units. And so this bill requires us to allow 2 accessory dwelling units on 1 lot if constructed with a detached single-family home, and we must allow that in multiple configurations, so attached, detached, or internal. We also are required to allow the sale of the independent sale of an ADU from the primary home, and again, ADU regulations cannot be more restrictive than the regulations applied to the primary home. And the city cannot require a property owner to live on site. So those are the major highlights. And so now we're going to move into the first policy question, which is, should massing and facade design standards be applied citywide? So again, this question was posed at the last meeting. The administration is proposing to relocate 2 design standards from the Old Town design standards, or that are applied to single-family homes in the Old Town sub-area. And so we're suggesting that these are relocated and applied citywide to all single-family zones, so that would apply to detached single-family homes as well as middle housing building types. So the first requirement is about building modulation. Building modulation increases visual interest and also creates a more human scale, and also an engaging streetscape. The second requirement is related to just blank walls. This standard is requiring windows or balconies or some type of architectural feature or change in color, again, to ensure that there's visual interest and that it's not a blank facade. So why are these standards Why are they important and why should they be put in place? Design standards are guidelines that ensure that the building's design is functional, attractive, and compatible across different projects. House Bill 1110 states that middle housing regulations cannot be more restrictive than those for single-family homes. And so adopting the design standards would apply again to single-family and multifamily because building multifamily is being introduced into single-family neighborhoods. And so we want to ensure that there's compatibility between the design standards. And it's just important to have standards in place for those bad apples who want to not put these types of design elements in their on their building. So the administration is suggesting that these designs these design standards to ensure compatibility, also to ensure that new construction is aligned with the existing buildings that are currently in place. They're in line with the character of the neighborhood, and again, to avoid featureless buildings. So during the last meeting, I received some homework. So there was a concern that the proposed design standards may be a little bit too burdensome for developers. And so I looked at existing detached single-family homes that were constructed over the last 5 years that were outside of neighborhoods that have specific design standards. And many of the homes already are incorporating these proposed standards, which leads us to believe that the proposed amendments would not create a hardship or be difficult to implement. So I'm going to stop here and give it to the...
All right, well, thank you, Valerie. To all of our commissioners, but especially our new commissioners, I know joining a commission can be a little bit like jumping on trying to jump on a moving train. So we do want to open it up for questions. The only thing I ask is maybe tip up the microphone so we can try and keep a little bit of decorum and a little bit less crosstalk, and I'll acknowledge you, and then please step in and ask your questions. So anybody with questions as far as, before we kind of get into providing Valerie some feedback as far as the standards? Any questions? Commissioner Krass.
Thank you, Commissioner Krass. And I probably would have gotten the award for the least favorite commissioner.
Most difficult, not
Most
least
difficult,
favorite.
sorry. So Valerie, thanks for going back and doing the homework and not using my house, you used my neighbor's house, which is good, in one of those pictures. I am curious, first of all, thanks for going back and doing the homework. Did you find some that didn't fit based on the new ones? Because if one of the things, because I have a bias of, how do you regulate attractiveness or things that are very subjective? So I'm very cautious about those things. And one of the things I was hoping that you would find, and love to hear more of, when you did that, did almost everything already pass, so it becomes less of a burden, especially when you get to the single-family houses, of someone who's doing that. So I'd love to hear a little bit more based on what you learned from your scrub that you just did.
So yes, all of the homes incorporated the standards, of course, as you can see from the images. So these are all images that are in Issaquah. So as you can see, the style and the way that, people chose to implement these standards varied, by neighborhood and just by project and scale. And so, no, they weren't burdensome. They didn't seem like hard, but they also, you can see, allowed the developer to get creative and choose, how to apply the different modulation or the color or the size or, design of the windows. So it allowed you to, or allowed the developer to, kind of provide some, again, visual interest, but in the ways that they felt that was appropriate.
So just for some background, so the one of these is across the street from me, so I know that. And we're not in an HOA or anything like that. Some of these other ones may be in either Talus or Highland, so they probably have their own design requirements. I guess I was curious for the ones that don't already have design requirements, if you found violations that, they built that and they shouldn't have, in the new rules, that would not have passed. That's what I was kind of looking for.
So when we do plan review for projects that are in the Highlands or in Talus, because they're the ones who actually have HOAs with design standards. The applicants are required to go through the HOA and then have either a stamp or a letter stating that the HOA approves their design before the city will approve their project. So I'm going to say that I believe that they're in line because we wouldn't have approved their project if they didn't have that stamp of approval from their HOA. So I can't say, once we approved the project, if something changed and it didn't align, but if it did, they would have to take that up with their HOA.
I was asking a slightly different question, which was, when you went back and looked at the things that have been built the last few years, did you find some that were not part of the HOAs, take those out, that, this would not pass our current, list of requirements? Or did everything that you looked at, the builders did this on their own because they want to have a attractive sellable house, so it becomes something they would do during normal course of action?
Yes, I believe this is something that they do during the normal course of action. Another point to mention is that we know of the HOA in the Highlands and Taos, but we don't know where all of the HOAs are throughout the city. And so, but again, usually when developments are established or built, they develop the HOA before the buildings are around the time the buildings are constructed. So those design guidelines may not be in place when we approve the building permit.
Any other questions? Commissioner Adair?
Can I make a comment regarding Commissioner Crash? So in my prior town where I lived, Studio City, California, I can kind of answer the question. So over time, we had a lot of developers coming in and buying up like little 1940s cottages and building McMansions. And in my neighborhood, they developed rules regarding what they needed to look like aesthetically. And in the next neighborhood over just like 3 blocks down, they didn't. And there was really a stark contrast in the homes. The houses closer to what's known as the Silver Triangle looked like concrete boxes, whereas the ones that were built in the neighborhoods where they got together and they made rules about the aesthetics looked, in my opinion, much nicer. They were more Cape Cod style. They were more like what you would see here. And these are $3.6 million homes. They're pretty, they're pretty expensive homes. So the developers were trying to sell them for a lot of money, but they still made ugly houses.
Commissioner Allner?
Up in the Highlands, we do have HOA design standards. Sorry. We have design standards, but they're not static. When we built our house now about 12 years ago, we, of course, adhered to those design standards, and then the city approved our building permit. Since then, the HOA has become a little more flexible, and some of those design standards have evolved or have been dissolved over time. And so I think it's important to understand that they're not static necessarily where you have HOAs.
All right, thank you. Questions, comments? So one question I have, Chair Voice, is mass and facade. We're talking about taking Old Town or something similar. Are you guys actually coming up with a new plan, or are you just taking the Old Town? We're not talking about the color palette or things like that. This is just about facing, modulation, things like that.
Correct. We're just proposing to take these 2 requirements. The first one about building articulation, and then just again avoiding blank wall treatment. Those are the only 2 standards that we're proposing to basically apply citywide. But everything else would change. We would not be implementing a color wheel, or we wouldn't have those stringent requirements that we do on Old Town.
Okay. All right. How's everybody feel about this? Commissioner Krass?
So I'm the one asking all the questions because, as I said, I'm very cautious about having any legislation based on taste and things that are very subjective. As part of this, is there an appeals process if someone comes and says, hey, wait, this is close enough? Is there is there it's just a yes or no when they put something in that someone looks at and say, hey, you're 4 feet, 8 feet, and et cetera? Or is there some discussion aspect of it? Because there may be a reason why something needs to be built a certain way, because there's a heritage tree on the property or whatever. And what is the process in case there is someone who wants to build something that doesn't meet the specs as you have them out there?
So if someone is not able or does not want to comply with code, we would not approve their project. So these standards are pretty lenient in that someone should be able to meet these standards. And if they couldn't, then again, we wouldn't approve their project. Now, there are some instances where, like you said, maybe there's, I don't know, something in place that they couldn't meet, then we would just have to have a conversation and understand what that is. But for most people, they would be able to implement these. One, because, again, we're giving them options. So like this first one, you have to incorporate both of these standards, but this second one, you get to choose. You can do anything within this list. And so you should be able to find at least 2 things, again, add some windows in a couple places, change the facade color. So we believe that they are reasonable. And so we shouldn't have this issue where we have to have a back and forth about whether or not you can comply or not.
This is all level 1 reviews, so there's a director. Now, do they have discretion to actually talk with the homeowner and be, like, to Commissioner Krass's point, hey, we understand this might be a hardship, but if you implement this one from our table of things you can do. So there's someone to work with them.
Oh, yeah. So, staff is pretty nice.
I think so.
We can have a conversation. But if someone wants to talk to Minnie, because she is the decision maker on it, then they're more than welcome to talk to Minnie. But again, usually staff is able to or find a resolution with the developer or property owner that works for everyone.
Want to make sure I don't miss anyone. Commissioner Zakharoff? Okay. I'm coming with Commissioner Krass. I don't typically like a whole lot of regulations, but I don't think these are burdensome myself. And again, I think it beautifies the city. Nobody wants to be next to someone who builds a large box. And again, the city is not being overly cumbersome because, again, they're being given a list of options. And I think, again, to Valerie's point, they can choose. But asking people to build an attractive home in our city, I don't think is too much to ask, especially, again, for the most part, builders are doing this anyway. Builders are trying to build attractive homes to bring in homeowners. Modulation is, again, that's a pretty basic component of architecture. Some of the front porch stuff is a little bit unique to Issaquah, but I don't see them as burdensome because, again, they have multiple options to choose from. And we're not talking about the color wheels, again, that Old Town has. Some of the things that Old Town is a little bit more restrictive. Again, talking to our general comment tonight, these houses are older, 1900s, but I don't see these as restrictive myself, so I'd be in favor for this. Of course you can, Commissioner Krass.
You'd expect nothing less. I do, because I'm trying to think, what scenarios do we feel like this would be the most cumbersome? And I think it's when you have someone building on a very small lot. And like asking someone for trim or things like that, not colors, that's not a big deal. When you get to you have to have the 4 foot in depth and 8 foot width kind of setback things. If you're on a very strange or small lot, that may make it unbuildable because of the setbacks. And that's why I was asking if there's a way to, like I look at my lot, I have a decent sized house, but on a 2,800 square foot lot. And I don't think, we should talk afterwards. I don't think mine would pass this. Did it? You went by my house? You were across the street from my house. I wasn't sure. Did I pass?
Your home isn't in Old Town. It's outside.
No, but we're talking about doing this outside of Old Town.
Correct, but this would apply to buildings over 30 feet. So if you have like a smaller lot than this, or a smaller home, this wouldn't apply. So you have to think a lot of the lots in Old Town, or for single-family duplex, our minimum lot size is 6,000 square feet. So,
No, but Old Town, we're talking about outside, like I'm in Issaquah
correct.
Valley.
Correct.
I have a long skinny lot, so my front door is over 30 feet. So, but it's skinny in a different way. So I probably, depends on which side you count as the front. And I just want to, I think it gets really, as we get to smaller and smaller lots for people to build, and when we have setbacks, that you have to be part of, all of a sudden it may make it so there's no room for a garage, there's no room for something else. That's why I was asking about if you have the flexibility of having a discussion and getting a variance on that. Because otherwise you may take a piece of property and make it unbuildable. And I'll give you my address, and I'm curious, mine probably wouldn't pass this, because if you look at my front facade, I don't have that 4 foot by 8 foot. Maybe I did, actually, it's probably pretty close. But it's one of those things that I just want to be very cautious on, because as we're getting smaller and smaller lots to have more density, and setbacks are still there. I want to make sure that we don't paint ourselves in the corner on some of those things without the flexibility to do something creative if we needed to.
Right. At the moment, we do not have any provisions in our code that allow for a deviation from these type of standards. I will say that prior to the big code update that we did in 2023, we did have language that allowed for an out. And I believe it was the recommendation of council to move away from that because everyone was asking for them, So I think we believe these standards are not burdensome. They're applied to Old Town, which have a lot of small homes. And so we don't think they would be a challenge. Now, as for your lot, yeah, but I do want to make the point, it's going to be hard to look at your home and say, you don't have this, and so it doesn't work. It's because you weren't required to abide by this. So I think we would have to just look at the lot as a whole to see, could a building, 30 feet or more
But you're
be
going to see more,
constructed?
like I live on what was an infill, so it was a single family on a good sized lot. A builder bought it, chopped up into 3 lots. So they're all pretty small, and that was the goal of the city to have more of those. And you're going to start seeing more of those. I'm in Issaquah Valley, not in Old Town. And if more of those are happening, you're probably going to have more of those instances. Yes, mine was done before these rules, so I don't care about my house. I'm just saying that's an example that made me think about this may not be a unique situation as you're having smaller lots, because I think you can get down to 2,500 square foot lots, I think, where we live. First, and then if you do that, then it just makes it a little more cumbersome. All I was asking is, what is the process? If you've looked at all these different things in the last 10 years and everything's passed, then I feel better about it. I don't know if we have yet, so I'm going to be more cautious on this than the rest of the commissioners, and I think that's the whole point of this. But I think I've expressed my thoughts. Thank you.
So you're saying you're concerned? Okay. Would anyone else like to comment to provide Valerie feedback? I'm looking at Commissioner Zakharoff, Commissioner Adair, Commissioner Millender-Irwin, Commissioner Alliner, Vice Chair Patterson.
I think that the variability for all of the designs that are offered, I think, are within the building standards and also the character of Old Town. So I think that there's enough choice here in order for the building standards to be maintained. So I think they're quite beautiful.
All right. Thank you. Commissioner Alliner.
Yeah, I think what the aim here is to create residential scale and a sense of massing that is compatible with existing buildings. It does not go into things like sizes of windows or locations of the windows. It simply calls for the building not to have blank facades on the street. So, there's nothing in there about materials or roof slopes or, colors and those sorts of things, I think, can tend to create more of a standardized, ticky-tacky look. Here, I think these regulations allow for a lot of flexibility and a lot of variability while keeping a residential scale.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Alliner. Commissioner Adair?
Yeah, and I just want to add that I think that while we can argue that some taste is subjective, they have done some studies on what the human eye finds more attractive in terms of architecture. So there's an empirical element to it, and I think that this is a great way of articulating what people are looking for in a homey building structure that feels comfortable. And I think 30 feet wide is a fairly wide building, and it looks like there's a lot of ways to do the 4 by 8 foot variability on the facade. So I don't think it's burdensome.
Commissioner Zakroff?
Good evening, everyone. You can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, so, well, I just wanted to support again what I said at the last meeting, and I truly believe that these rules are simply made to avoid building another project like the one that caused moratorium years ago. So I am in support. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Zakroff. Vice Chair Patterson, going once, going twice? Vice Chair Patterson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I am in support of this overall. I think to Commissioner Krass's point, maybe a bit of stress testing on lot possibilities for the areas outside of Old Town might be a kind of a happy medium in terms of how this would, this change would impact some of those maybe smaller lots or certain lot sizes or configurations. But I think in terms of the design standards, I personally am kind of in favor of those. So.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Vice Chair. Again, like I said, I don't think they're too cumbersome, but I do hear Commissioner Krass's point as well as Vice Chair Patterson's. And just one thing for our newer commissioners, again, this is an iterative process every year. If things aren't working, I mean, we can always come back to things. Title 18 obviously is a big moving block that we took on 2 years ago. And, you know, we're still working out some kinks. So again, it's not something that is just die in the cast, it's over. If the city does run into problems with it, it can be addressed again. So, Valerie, did you get the feedback you were looking for?
I did, thank you.
All right.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the second question, which is, does the commission agree with the proposed open space requirements for cottage and courtyard housing? So after the last meeting, staff conducted additional research, and we're changing our proposal. We're now recommending new requirements for courtyard housing. So instead of requiring 400 square feet and 800 square feet per unit, we're now recommending 400 square feet and 800 square feet per project. We believe this is more aligned with the intent of the bill, and then it also considers sites that are encumbered by critical area that are required to leave that area undeveloped, so there'll be open space on site. And so so I think during the last meeting, there was a question of, what does 400 or 800 square feet look like? Because we've reduced this size, 400 square feet is basically a 2-car garage or like a large living room. And 800 square feet is like a pickleball court or a studio apartment. So I have the pickleball part has those little dots are people, give you a little scale. So again, it's always good to understand what other cities are doing. And so as far as the cottage housing, we're not changing that proposal. We're going to keep it at 300 square feet. We believe we're in line with, some of the other cities, kind of in the middle of the road. As far as courtyard housing, a lot of jurisdictions are not, they don't have specific requirements for courtyard housing. Many folks have just said, the minimum dimensions may be 15 or 20 feet in both directions. But Bothell is one where they do have a minimum square foot per unit, but then they have a minimum 800 square feet per development. And so, again, we feel confident about the new proposal of having 400 square feet and 800 square feet per development. And so, pose the question again. Does the commission agree with the proposed open space requirement for cottage and courtyard housing?
Okay, let's open it up. Commissioner Allender?
Valerie, could you go back to the slide where you sort of first one.
Oh, this one?
Nope,
This guy.
yes, that one. So I'm just questioning whether 400 square feet for 10 units seems right. Seems like it might be a little small.
So we're requiring a minimum, no maximum. So if someone would like to provide more than that, then that's fine. But this is just the starting point. So typically, someone will probably provide more. But if they don't, again, we're pushing for more housing than open space. And
Understood. In that 400 square feet per our correspondence previous to the meeting, that 400 square feet also includes pathways to the units.
Correct.
So what may end up in terms of open space, green space, is somewhat limited. I mean, if you've got something with 10 units and you've got 40 square feet per unit and 20 square feet of that is taken up by a pathway, there's not a lot left for greenery. That would be my concern.
Understand. I think the other point to remember is that this area has setbacks. So a lot of the single-family zones have either 10 or 20-foot setbacks, which also kind of eat into that developable area. And so, again, we were trying to be mindful of the open space that's required to be provided, as well as the fact that, again, many single-family lots throughout the city are encumbered by critical areas. And so, which also takes away from your buildable area.
So, so this open space requirement is in addition to the setback?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And clearly, that doesn't include critical areas.
Correct. It does not include critical areas.
Commissioner Krass?
Thank you, Valerie, for going back and looking at that. By the pickleball court, I learned something. I didn't know how big a pickleball court is. It's you love them, except if your neighbor has one, and then it makes a weird noise. But I think what you did here was great. I appreciate the update.
All right, little feedback. Oh, we got a Simpson hand. Commissioner Zakharoff.
Okay, now I have a question. Between 5 to 10 units and 11 plus units, 10 units and 11 units. When you have 10 units, it's 400 square feet per project, and 11 is already twice more. So to me, I'm thinking maybe it should be something per unit, because it kind of like makes the smaller projects very unattractive for the buyer or for the homeowner. At the same time, bigger projects, 11 units, kind of like unattractive for the builder because they need to provide more space for like outdoor amenity space. So I kind of like trying to math the math there. So maybe we should think about it as something per unit.
Thank you, Commissioner Zakharoff. Vice Chair Patterson.
Thank you, Chair Voice. I guess question, with the 800 square feet minimum per project, I'm guessing, and maybe you can confirm that one of the benefits of that is that it helps create more housing on different lot sizes, if you will, meaning instead of having like a requirement per unit, that might cause them to create less units in favor of less common space, outdoor space, correct? Is that kind of a?
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
All right. So I kind of share Commissioner Oliner's concern. And again, to your point, I know this is a minimum. And I know property here in Issaquah is very expensive. My question is it too cumbersome? Is it too much to have it kind of staggered? So I was just thinking, real quickly, 6 at 400 square feet, 8 at 600, 10 at 800, because my concern is a little bit more like those 10 units that get the 400. It's not so much the size, because I think a 6 units, a small common area is fine, but it's the 10 units that still get the 400 that's a little bit more concerning. And to your point, if the land is expensive and they can only, if they're encumbered by critical areas, That's my concern. It's not so much the actual size, it's that big jump from 5 to 10 where there's nothing in between.
So the units were separated this way based off of, I believe, the threshold for plats, because we believe this would, if someone wanted to either plat or create tracks, so that the common space was owned by all, we wanted those to be in alignment. So if we kept the 10 unit threshold to not create confusion, because that, we also aligned it so that you don't trigger a higher process, right? So right now, plats are a level 2, level, they're a lower level, and so they go to the hearing examiner. But if you possibly have a higher threshold, it could kick it to the Development Commission, which is another public hearing process. So we were trying to align the review process should someone want to do a couple of things, which is not uncommon. And so if we were to keep that 10-unit threshold as the mark, how would you do that? So if you had like a small, medium, and large, maybe, I don't know, 8 to 10 is like the medium, would that be appropriate? Or do you want to do something different?
I mean, I understand you're trying to line it up with something else in the code. I just, like I said, again, 400 is not a lot.
Right.
You know, that's pretty small. I was thinking about it the day when I was reading this, and I was looking around my place, and I was like, this is really small. And so, like I said, that, I just wondered if it's staggered, if that would be helpful. As far as what that actually looks like, again, I'm kind of deferring to you guys and your guys' expert opinions. But I just, like I said, my concern is those 9 and 10 units that still are only required the 400. So is there a way to do that efficiently with the city where we're not throwing things into new standards? Yes, I know we're trying to move for density. We're not trying to, you know, throw this to a level 3 where all of a sudden we have public hearings because, again, we're trying to make this easy for these middle housing. My thing was just really more or less those 9 units that are still only at 400, those 10 units that are 400. Is there any way we can kind of stagger it? So,
Yes, we can propose, again, maybe a middle or a small, medium, large bucket, and we can look at that and propose something. Yes.
okay. Yeah, Vice Chair Patterson. Yep. Looks like Stephen wants to speak, but I don't know. Nope, Vice Chair Patterson.
Thank you, Chair. One thing I thought might help our discussion is if you could maybe clarify for us courtyard housing and how it's laid out, because it's my understanding that there are attached units that have a central courtyard. Is that true? And that's what we're talking about here, right? It's basically kind of a starting size for a central courtyard, right? And then the attached courtyard housing would be, you know, somehow kind of around it, or maybe you can
Correct.
kind of get into that a little bit.
Yeah, so they're usually, I believe the code requires them to be an L shape. I believe there's another, but basically they're L-shaped buildings, and you're right. The buildings are around a courtyard. I believe the code requires that they have to either C or L shape. And they have to either surround the courtyard either on 2 or 3 sides. And so, yeah, if you think like an apartment building, stacked flats, and then an open space in the middle. And the requirement for courtyard is that they gain access from this courtyard, not from the street.
Gotcha. And that would count for the outdoor amenity space, correct? Like that,
Right.
that area would
Be their
be
amenity
included in that.
space, correct.
Okay. So that might help clarify a little bit in terms of, you know, you imagine an L shape or a C shape, and then that middle area is the courtyard. So realistically, 400 probably isn't going to be enough for, you know, 5 to 10 units. They're probably going to have to be bigger than that, feasibly, but I mean, realistically.
The other point to just point out is that this is 5 units or above, and so this wouldn't be going into single-family zones. These would be for multifamily, so central areas with a little bit more land.
Yeah, what triggered this whole thing for me was that when I was looking it up online and looking at images, I saw a lot of beautiful, you know, layouts from the United Kingdom. So obviously they looked like they had a little bit more land to work with, but again, I thought of that 400, and it just seems so small. But again, I know property in Issaquah is very expensive, so. Commissioner Adair?
Yeah, and do we need to specify that it's contiguous? Are we worried about that in terms of what the builders might pull out?
I believe in the community amenity code, we do state that it needs to be continuous, but I'll double check that.
Commissioner Oliver?
So I'm looking at cottage housing, which is not necessarily attached dwellings, correct? So if you have 5 units in cottage housing, you would have to have 1,500 square feet of open space. If you then had 5 units in courtyard housing, you would need to have a minimum of 1,100 square feet less. Is that intended? Is that
that is-
what you're
Yes.
imagining?
That is correct. Yes, you would have to provide less with courtyard housing.
Thank you.
Commissioner Millender Irwin, did I miss you? Is that your microphone?
Oh, no.
Okay, sorry. Anyone else would like to give Valerie feedback on this? Questions, comments, concerns? Valerie, you feel like you have enough to run with?
Yes, I will be back.
Look at that, no homework tonight.
Okay, moving. Okay, parking standards. So during the last meeting, I mentioned that parking was going to be part of a comprehensive parking code update where we're going to be addressing multiple bills. So the state has recently passed some new legislation, and so related to parking, and so we need staff would like an opportunity to review that a little bit more. And so because we have this June deadline for middle housing, we're going to break it up. And so middle housing or the parking standards are going to come back, and so we're going to do all middle housing together. And so just wanted to remind you very quickly what the requirements are for middle housing. The city cannot require on-site parking if a lot is within a half-mile walking distance of a major transit stop. No more than 1 parking stall can be required for lots that are 6,000 square feet or smaller than 6,000 square feet. No more than 2 parking stalls can be required per unit for lots that are greater than 6,000 square feet. And again, that requirement that the regulations for middle housing must be the same for single family. There's been a lot of confusion around the requirements for major transit stops, so I just want to touch on those a little bit. So there are 2 requirements for related around major transit stop. The first one is related to lot density, and so the city must allow 4 dwelling units on 1 lot if that lot is within a quarter-mile walking distance of a major transit stop. The second requirement is related to the parking requirement, and that's where that half-mile requirement comes in. And so there, again, the city may not require parking on site for those lots. So if you have a lot that's within a quarter-mile walking distance, they would not be required, or they could be allowed to have 4 units on 1 lot and no parking. And so the map that you're seeing right here is of a map showing the quarter-mile and half-mile walking distance from the Issaquah Transit Center. So the light blue is the quarter-mile, and then the darker outside area is the half-mile. And then the green lots, or the green outline lines, are highlighting the lots that are part of the walking distance. So I also want to kind of talk about this interpretation. So the state is interpreting major transit stops as all Sound Transit bus stops. So meaning that all the lots that are within close proximity, or are there all lots within close proximity to Sound Transit routes 554 and 556 must be allowed to utilize these provisions. And so the administration disagrees with this interpretation. We are very concerned about the impacts that this is going to have to a lot of residential neighborhoods. And so I just wanted to update you and let you guys all know that city staff is continuing to work with our state representatives to change this definition. And we're doing this during the current legislation session. And so we're hoping hoping that this definition gets modified before the middle housing regulations are adopted.
Can we stop you right there? Because like
Yeah.
you said, this is a point of contention. And I know obviously the planning policy already gave some feedback as far as the two lots that we prefer. Obviously, a majority of our residents prefer. You wouldn't happen to have Thomas's graph too, of the bus routes, the ones that looks like our little city got, you know, missiled, the ones with the big red circles?
I d- Oh, I do not have that. Do not have that
Because
available.
I think that's the one that actually shows those bus routes as major transit. That's the one that if we could bring, because again, I share the residents' frustration with this, and I know the city's working on it. I know some of our emails might think we're not, but they're kind of funny. But regardless, that graph was really, that picture, that slide was very helpful, because it does show currently what the state believes are major transit stops, basically covers the entire Old Town,
That is correct.
which is ridiculous, but obviously you guys are working hard on that. Yes, Commissioner Krass.
Hi, Commissioner Krass. So thanks for fighting that. I do wonder whether you have some power with teaming up with Bellevue specifically and other cities that are going to have the same exact issue with this. Because if you think about what this would do, if you did every bus stop in Bellevue, the entire city of Bellevue would be considered within a quarter mile or half mile, wherever the things is. So I think you may, I'm curious if you have any partnerships with our neighboring cities that have the same issue that we do, and if that helps you with the state.
Commissioner Kress, Stephen Patel, Assistant Planning Director. So we have a lot of partnerships with all of our neighboring cities. Some of those cities are already allowing the higher density or no parking requirements in a lot of those areas. And so some of those cities may not be interested in any change, or it's not impacting them because they already allow some of that. But a lot of where the issue is at the state level. It's the state interpretation of this legislation that is requiring us to allow this density and the parking exemption in these areas. So that's what we have to comply with. And so that's why we're working closely with our state representatives to try to change that interpretation.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, and I hope that is clear for the public that, again, the administration, obviously the planning policy, but the administration's fighting to get those terms changed because, again, we don't believe that's fair. I'll just say it so the residents know, yes, the planning policy, I mean, we haven't asked our new commissioners, but prior to our first reading, yes, we wanted the required two. We didn't want it to go up to 4. Now, I know there's 1 or 2 voices out there that do, but as far as a commission, we were for 2. So clearly that'll be a part of the public hearing next meeting. But yeah, so again, I know it's a little contentious, but that was just something I want to make sure. And because I saw this also on a different page, Valerie, since we're just talking about this issue really quick, I believe it was page 61 of the packet. It looks like you guys have that wording in there for the 2, correct? I'm sorry, I don't have the actual
Oh, you mean
code.
for the lot density?
Right.
Oh, yes.
So you guys basically interpreted what we said. You guys have applied it to the written language. Now, again, council has to okay that. Council can do whatever they like with our recommendation. But as far as your code that you've updated, you've already reflected what our will and preference was.
Yes. Okay.
And that's what I thought. So, okay, thank you. Oh, thank you, Tisha. Sorry. It's so small on the monitor. Commissioner Zakharoff.
Okay, I would also like to talk about the major transit stop understanding with budget cuts, and budget cuts will be going towards the King County Metro as well, and with us already having not enough buses and buses that are not running all the time, and I'm all pro public transportation and affordable housing and everything like that. I don't think that at this point this rule can be applied to our city. I'm very, very concerned about that. So yeah, I'm just talking here in support of changing the definition of a major transit stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Zakroff. Commissioner Oliver.
So I just want to have a point of clarification. The statement here is that the city must allow 4 dwelling units on all residential lots within that quarter of a mile distance. But that does not override the underlying zoning limitations, meaning setbacks, green space, permeability, things of that sort. So if you have a small lot, the city isn't compelled to approve 4 units on that lot.
That is correct. So the lot will be allowed to have that, but you would still have to meet all zoning and design standards.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no, great point. Thank you, Commissioner Oliver. Seems like we got off track of your parking. Am I missing something? Yeah, can we go back to parking? Please.
Okay. So here are the latest proposed amendments. The administration is proposing to break the parking requirements up by lot size for both single family and middle housing. So the initial proposal, I think, was just to add a requirement for middle housing, but we realized that we weren't really in alignment, and then we were possibly reducing parking in some areas or allowing more parking in other areas. And so just to make sure that we are in strict alignment with House Bill 1110, we are proposing to add additional lines for single family based off of lot size. So again, that threshold of lots that are 6,000 square feet or less, and then 6,000 square feet or more. You'll notice that with single family, like for instance, single family detached, the minimum is 1 unit per lot and the maximum is 2 unit per lot. But for middle housing, for lots 6,000 that are less than 6,000 square feet, the minimum is 1 unit, but there's no maximum in the event that someone wants to provide more parking, just to address parking issues in certain neighborhoods.
Great, thank you, Valerie. Commissioner Krass?
Commissioner Kress, I have a question about parking.
Yes.
I'm going to stay on topic. So is parking within a garage counted in these numbers?
That is correct, yes.
So here's a scenario. If I look at, and the only point I have is about a max on the first line. When you have a single family detached, if you have a 2-car garage, but you also have a driveway, does that mean you can't have a 2-car? You're telling someone they can't have a 2-car garage? Or does that mean
Correct.
you?
That's correct.
So can I ask a question? Why would we have a max as opposed to making it that NA? And if it fits, let them do that versus not? That's,
So the provisions for single-family detached were addressed in the last code update. And so again, the goal of this project is just to align with House Bill 1110. So if we would like to have a discussion about possibly removing that max, then we can do that.
okay, that was before my time. But I think it is kind of a weird thing because then says you have to build a smaller garage or have a shorter driveway or something like that where you can't park on there versus, I mean, letting someone have that flexibility. So yeah, I would love to look at why there's a max on that specific one. I'm not sure what the mechanism, we're having the conversation now. What's the mechanism to have that conversation?
We can have that conversation, but I also want to just remind you that we have a June deadline. And so in order to keep in line with the schedule, you would have to make a decision by the public hearing. And so I guess I would like to know a little bit more. Would you be supportive of removing the max or changing the minimum?
No, the minimum's fine. I think I would, if I had my magic wand, I just think it's odd to have a max. If someone has a 5,000 square foot lot and builds a single family house, you won't let them have a 2-car garage, which seems like a weird thing to do, especially if they have any type of driveway. So I would recommend getting rid of the max on that first line. And unless someone has a really good reason why it's there, besides it was there before.
Well, I was going to say what Director Dollarwall was going to say. So if the commission would like to make a recommendation, that is something that we can propose as part of the recommendation going to the commission on the public hearing, and then that recommendation would go to the city council.
I would like to make that recommendation.
Can you restate it, please?
I would like to make a recommendation that we remove the max for the first line where it's single-family detached for lots under 6,000 square feet, allowing a homeowner to have the flexibility to have a two-car garage and a driveway if they choose, if it fits and meets all the other parameters that are built into the code.
Okay. Commissioner Krass has asked for our opinion, so we'll just make this easy. If everyone's in favor of Commissioner Krass, just go ahead and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Chair,
I,
Chair
Aye.
first, we need to first ask for a discussion before we take a formal vote.
We're going to make this real formal, okay?
It's more informal vote in terms of
Okay.
how you want staff to proceed, but at least for the commissioners' benefit, just having a discussion before trying to take a vote.
Okay. So we'll have a brief discussion. Commissioner Krass, why don't you go ahead and lead it? Basically, the reason behind it and what you're actually asking us to look at, which is the top line,
Yeah.
single-family detached, less than 6,000.
Yes, I mean, I would love other people's perspective if I missed something on if you believe that we should keep a max for that first line item or eliminate it like I proposed.
Commissioner Adair?
I just want to play devil's advocate here. What's to stop somebody from making a super wide driveway or giant garage and having like 6 cars in Jay Leno's garage?
There,
I guess
Or
just-
you have the LeMays as your neighbor, right? Like, you know, the LeMays, yeah.
I would assume just the property value alone, right? I mean, that's what's going to keep people honest, right? Right, and again, it's a
They
great,
have car elevators now. Come on now. No.
no, it's a great point, and again, that's why we want to have a little bit of a deliberation. I would assume probably just literally the property value, right? And to Commissioner Krass's point, this is under 6,000, so how much unconditioned living space would they really want on their lot? Again, this is prime real estate, so that would be my rebuttal, I suppose, to playing devil's advocate.
So for example, one of the pictures you had earlier, my neighbor's house, could not build, they have a driveway that you could put a car on, and they have a two-car garage. The lot is under 6,000 square feet. They couldn't do that in this. So I think that would be, that, I just think that doesn't make sense, so.
Chair Vice, if I could just chime in, because a few commissioners have kind of asked us of why you put in kind of a maximum on a parking. And typically and I can't speak to why the city of Issaquah established maximums, because many of us weren't here when they had those discussions. But for many cities, when they establish the maximums, it's primarily at the discussions around the number of vehicles people are going to be driving in and out of their lot from their home. There are street standards that limit kind of the length or width of driveways or garages, but it doesn't limit the amount of vehicles that necessarily they have on site. And so someone could, unless you are creating that limiter on the number of total vehicles that they can be parking as part of the development, they could be unlimited number of vehicles going in and out of their site. And so that's part of the discussion that most communities usually have that establish that maximum. I would also say that usually when you establish a maximum, you don't also have a minimum. So usually you see one or the other. The city of Issaquah, like some of the cities in our region, have both.
All right, a little bit of a historical perspective. Does that change anyone's purview? Commissioner Millender-Irwin.
It changes my perspective a bit because in terms of the visual of having 3 or 4 cars stacked up in a driveway, that in itself, I think that is just, it's a visual blight. So it certainly gives me pause because initially, I certainly was not on the side of having a maximum. Minimum makes sense. The size of the lot tells me that you could probably curtail having an issue with the, just having the minimum and not a maximum. But I'm thinking about the visual blight at this point of having several cars stacked up in a fairly wide driveway. So, consideration.
Commissioner Krass?
That's, thanks for that feedback. It is a small lot, so it's under 6,000 square feet. And you probably couldn't go too deep and have a garage and still have a house that would then start. So I think this is there's one thing of the logistics of it. The other one is, it's also, goes back to my other feelings, like how much is it for us to regulate what's attractive and what's not attractive? And I think I side on, I'll focus more of my energies on the logistics of it. Because a builder, if you're building a new house, you're going to put more square footage in the house than the garage. That's why new houses have tiny garages. And you don't realize that till you move in. You're like, wait, this is 2 feet shorter than my other garage. But you're still going to want to be able to put a car in a driveway. So I hear your point. You don't want to have, 12 cars next door, but you probably wouldn't find that in a small lot because I don't think it'd be physically possible.
Okay, we're going to wrap this up real quickly with Vice Chair Patterson's excellent point coming up, and then we're going to try and figure this out with the vote so we can move on to our next order of business. So go ahead, Vice Chair Patterson.
Gotcha, thank you. Yeah, so just trying to find a middle ground here. Maybe there's an opportunity to just raise the maximum to say 4. It sounds like there's a consideration to like having a 2-car garage and then also having like 2 cars in the driveway, which seems like kind of maybe a happy medium-ish. But that's kind of my, raising the maximum to 4 is where I'd land on that.
Okay. Well, I suppose since what we basically have is Commissioner Krass's original no maximum or keeping it the way it is. Let's start with that and see if there's any type of support for that. I'm going to credit these great commissioners for changing my mind in this it's not broke, don't fix it type deal. So I'm just going to say leave it. But we probably should do this more formally than we just want to say all in favor of Commissioner Krass's recommendation, say aye. Okay. All in favor of Commissioner Krass's recommendation that we get rid of the maximum for single-family detached homes less than 6,000 square feet, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, so that fails, even though it's not formal again, so. Just call it. We have 2 people that voted no.
Yeah, so just for proper procedure,
Sure.
so for a vote, it's a standard process to call for ayes and call for noes. So if you don't mind calling for noes, just so we have a clear record, that'd be appreciated.
Yeah, no problem. So all in favor, say aye. All in favor, say no. 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 So it kind of worked. I think you had 3 noes, 1 aye, and 2 abstentions? Sure, but let's try and wrap this up.
I do. This is another one where if we go back to smaller lots, people building houses, which ones would fail this? I think you're going to find a fairly high degree of single-family homes that will exceed this maximum. And I think it's something that we should have more consideration on. I am surprised that we quickly flipped to that. I like Jesse's commission, I'm sorry, I'm informal. Vice Chair Patterson's, having a max that's higher, could be 4, because then you could have a 2-car garage and a driveway you could park on. But I think leaving it with a maximum of 2 is gonna, once again, reinforce that Issaquah is a very difficult place to do business and build in.
Okay, so we'll try this one more time. All in favor or who support Commissioner Krass's recommendation that we get rid of the maximum for single-family less than 6,000 square feet, please say aye.
Aye.
That is 2 ayes. Okay, now all who object, please say no. No.
No.
No.
Okay, so I count 1, 2, 3, 4. All who'd like to abstain.
Abstain.
Okay. Yes, I'll read this out loud. We have 2 that support, 4 that object, and 1 that abstains. For the record. Oh, okay, Jesse, did you want to make a motion?
Yes, I would, thank you, Chair. Vice Chair Patterson, I would like to make a motion to increase the maximum for single-family detached for lots less than 6,000 square feet to 4 per unit maximum.
Okay, so that is the motion on the floor. All in favor of Vice Chair Patterson's motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
that's unanimous. We'll go aye. There's some direction. Life is nothing but, right, life is nothing if not compromise, so. Okay, now, I believe, before we let Valerie go, is there any other questions, concerns for Valerie? But we do want to move along. We do have another part to get to.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that, this item, official public hearing, is next meeting. So if there's more information you needed, we could always come back. But sounds like we have direction from you on what to do with the maximum, and good conversation, good issue brought forward in terms of this is a problem, because you could have 2-car garage and 2-car spaces outside, which adds up to 4, and that solves that sort of problem. But your official voting and stuff will actually happen at the next meeting after you close the public hearing. That'll be a formal recommendation to council. So you'll still have an opportunity to make motions and other things at that time, but we take direction for this to inform the packet for next week's meeting.
Yeah, that's where I got confused. It started going very formal all of a sudden. But thank you, Minnie. And before we let you go, Valerie, did you get everything that you needed from the commission this evening?
I did, but I just want to briefly let you guys, or quickly go over the timeline. So like Minnie said, at the next meeting, that will be the public hearing for middle housing, where we'll be asking for a formal recommendation. And then again, April 1st is when we're going to take this item to PDE, the council committee, and then hopefully to city council in May for adoption. So that is it. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Valerie. That was fantastic, a great conversation. And then I think the only request I had was that Thomas's chart for the one that shows the mass transit for the public hearing.
Chair Voice, yes, we can follow up with the commission and send that graphic to the commissioners on Thomas's map showing the citywide routes and the stops, correct?
Yeah, okay, perfect. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Valerie. Okay, we're moving on to our next item of regular business. And this evening, we're going to receive a presentation from our city clerk, Tisha Geiser, who's going to provide the commissioners with their annual open government training. All right. And then Tisha, just a question for you. I know it's tough to present, so would you like us to just kind of bombard you with questions? Do you have little breaks in the presentation that you want us to kind of wait for?
You're welcome to ask questions anytime. I
Okay.
give this presentation a lot, so.
Okay, Tisha, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Let's pull up my slides here. All right, so as the chair said, my name's Tisha Geiser. I'm the city clerk. I've met most of you, and some of you have heard this training more than once, so I apologize. But I'm here today to ensure you have your required open government and public records training, and then I'm going to touch on a couple of meeting procedures I particularly want the new members to be aware of. And firstly, before I get started, thank you. Thank you for, and actually sitting here listening to your discussion and the nuance and complexity of the issues you're weighing in on makes me even more grateful that we have community members willing to serve in these seats and devote your hours of time sitting in this chamber reading your packets. So thank you. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this open government training. So Washington State really values transparency in government, and they have 2 laws that I'll be sharing with you today that really highlight this, and we call them the Sunshine Laws. If I didn't already just say this, because they shine light on government processes. And so this includes open meetings and accessible records, The reason we give this training is under state law, you're required to receive it as a volunteer with the city serving in a body such as this that is subject to both of these state laws. And, the city and in some cases yourself have liability if there's a violation of these. So we want to ensure you're aware. So we're going to start by talking about open meetings. So what this means is literally your meeting is open, so your doors are open. We've had some folks coming in and out of the lobby tonight, which is great. So we always will have your meetings in a location with an open door. And then the virtual meeting, we publish the password so anyone can pop into your virtual meeting at any time. And there are very, very few exceptions to this. This is ensuring that people who you're sort of representing in these seats have access to observe you working through your issues and making decisions that impact them. So this slide here, the sort of colored phrases are showing the state's minimum requirements related to open meetings, and then I'll just be sharing with you what Issaquah's practices are. So we have to publish your agendas and post them at your meeting site 24 hours in advance. But as you've noticed, we aim to publish your agendas the Friday before your meeting to give you all some time over the weekend or in those early days of the week to review your packets and be aware of what's on the agenda, also to give the public that notice. We have to take meeting minutes, so you have a recording secretary who's not here. In fact, I'm actually not exactly sure where she resides, but she is dutifully documenting your meetings in writing, and that is a requirement. And then, as you likely know, you're on camera. Hopefully you know that. You're on camera tonight, so your meetings are live streamed on we have a landing page on our website where the live stream goes out on YouTube, also on TV channel 21, and your meetings are also recorded and then posted on the YouTube channel. So again, a lot of access to government here. Like you heard me say, the public can also attend your WebEx meetings virtually as well. I talked to you about the fact that you're always going to be meeting in an open location. State law also says public comment has to be accepted if you're taking action at a meeting, which in your case would be those recommendations to the city council. And as you know, public comment is a fixture in all your meetings, and sometimes you have those public hearings as well. And then just one mention here about your special meetings. So you guys have regular meetings twice a month. You're actually our only commission that does. All of our other commissions meet just monthly, and some of them even less than that. Because of that, you don't need special additional meetings very often, but just wanted to let you know that if we have to adjust your, add a meeting or adjust your meeting date or time for any reason, under state law, we have to call that a special meeting. And when we have a special meeting, you can only discuss and act on items on your published agenda. So which is typically what you do anyways. I'm just letting you know it's not a good meeting to bring up a new topic. That's really not allowed. Okay, and then just a comment here, especially for anyone who might tune into our city council meetings sometimes, the state law does outline a few reasons we can have closed sessions where the public is not allowed, and let's hope that the Planning Commission does not need to participate in one of those, because usually it's for things like pending litigation, sort of contracts with staff, collective bargaining, things like that. So things that are not likely to come before the commission, but I wanted to let you know because they do exist, and our city council actually goes into them somewhat frequently. Okay, so then a couple things that I want you to know about as commissioners is what your quorum is. So your quorum is the minimum number of members that we need to have a meeting. Which is part of why we highly value our alternate members, because it helps ensure that we can have a meeting, even if folks are traveling or it's the summer or whatnot. So we need at least 4 of you here with us, and your rules say it can be in person or virtually, but we need 4 to have any kind of meeting. And I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about why we want you to think about that number 4 outside of your meetings as well. Well, actually, that's the next bullet here, so let's talk about it. So anytime 4 of you are together and you're talking about things like parking requirements in Issaquah, that could be considered a meeting. state law says when you're discussing items before the commission or acting on them, that can be considered a meeting. So we really don't want you to do that outside one of our noticed public meetings. So we don't even, and to be quite honest, we don't even, like, the meeting ends and then 4 of you are standing outside on the sidewalk after the meeting talking about what you just experienced. Like, even, we don't even really want that. We want you to be working through your issues here at the dais, which you did tonight really beautifully. And sometimes that can be uncomfortable because you don't know where your fellow commissioners are at on an issue, so you're having to kind of put yourself out there. But that's what, in Washington State, that was what was intended. And these same rules apply to our city council and our other boards and commissions. So let's talk a little bit more about that number 4. We don't want 4 of you, like, physically together. Say there's an event at the Issaquah Highlands Council's hosting and it's relating to design standards in the Highlands or something. We wouldn't want 4 of you attending that together, and especially sitting together if we hadn't noticed it as a meeting. So in cases like that, which I expect will be rare, if you're that 4th person, don't group with the others, maybe consider leaving and asking them to report out. Similarly, if there's a regional like event or something that's of interest to you guys, we recommend you designate a few folks to go, less than 4, and report back at your next commission meeting. So kind of the last bullet here, and something to think about, which is not kind of totally intuitive and I had not heard of before I began working for a local government in Washington State, was a serial meeting. And so there have been some court cases that have found that a discussion can even occur if it's, like, cumulative. So what this means is if one of you reach out to another commissioner after a meeting and are like, gosh, I'm really not, unsure about how you're going to vote on the 27th on an issue or something like that. And then one of the 2 of you then shares that conversation with 2 other members in passing, in email. All of a sudden, you've got 4 folks who've kind of shared, who now know each other's viewpoints going into a meeting. We can't even have that. And so what that means is you can have 1 or 2 people on the commission you reach out to and talk with, and that's great, but then don't go sharing their viewpoints with other commissioners. And also, where we're really careful with this is email, because email, it's so easy to do this, right? Respond with some input, it gets forwarded, other people kind of glom on. And so we try and be diligent with email. If you have things you want to share with staff, that is totally fine. Don't copy other commissioners. If you have information you want your other commissioners to receive, so when I say information, it wouldn't really be appropriate for you to email, like, your viewpoint and ask that to be shared, but you could email an article of interest or, something that's informational. Send it to Stephen and he can distribute it to the commission. So kind of try and have you sort of communicate through staff just to prevent any inadvertent issues with email.
So I should send him my ugly house pictures then?
Yes. Yeah. And then he can just distribute those, and then we recommend you not do a reply all, right? So yes, you can send those to Stephen. So if you find yourselves together at an event in Issaquah, you 4 of you can be there and you can talk. Just try not to talk about your upcoming PPC meeting. And also you can meet socially as a group, like you can have a social, and sometimes we've kind of helped even facilitate that. You can meet socially together, just keep your conversation more on a personal or work topic. Okay, any questions about that? Okay.
One, Tish, real quick, and I believe I know the answer to this, but when we took the tour of Old Town, because it was staff led, Stephen, Valerie led it, but was that an open meeting? Right, so that was published and everything, so that's why there was no fear of us talking about those housing types together. Yeah, no, I just, like I said, I don't remember the email. I'm sure it was, but I couldn't remember how I heard about it, other than being here.
Yes, Chair Voice, we are constantly keeping track of any of you attending any events, and if we're even close to a quorum, we're going to put the public notice out. And so for instance, the tours, they were advertised. If we had a quorum, or we're even close to a quorum, we advertise it as a public meeting.
Okay. So again, one of the reasons we train on this is because there are penalties for some of these things, and actually for these open meetings violations, they are assessed to you as a person, not to the city of Issaquah. So we just really want to make sure you're aware. And also it can, if let's hope this doesn't happen, but if someone is found to have knowingly breached this requirement, the action could be impacted that the commission has taken on that issue. All right, so we're going to move over to records and talk just for a few minutes about the Public Records Act. So the city, and actually the city clerk's office handles a lot of public records requests in the city, but we, as a public agency, we have a form on our website, and anywhere anyone in the world can request records of us at any time. We can charge fees, but they're very, very, very nominal fees. And it's interesting. People can really ask us for whatever they want. They can ask for any and all communications we've had with one of you, or with a particular staff person, or with a particular phrase, or on a particular topic. And so what that means is we just have to be careful, or aware of what we're keeping, where our records are at, and so that if we receive one of those requests, we have to provide any records we have. So that's the purpose of giving you just a little bit of training on this today. And again, the idea being the public should have a right to view records that the government is producing. So I'm going to just go through this slide real quick here. So most of your meeting documents, though, we're generating and we're sending to you. So those things you don't have to think about. We've got them. We got copies. We'll handle those. But things we do want you to think about are emails that might come to you directly as a commissioner and not to the group. You have your own emails, and we won't have a record of those. So 2 ideas. One is when you do any kind of response, include staff. That puts your email in our city email archive and ensures we have a copy. The other thing is some commissioners do choose to open a separate email account so they can really keep any commission emails separate. Again, you don't have to be worrying about keeping emails that Stephen sends you. We have those. It's just if a community member or someone external was to reach out to you. So again, you could, if you'd really like to kind of separate your commission work, you could have a separate email account, or you can just commit to forward or copy city staff on any non-city emails you might get. Similarly, different, but related to records, if you're a note taker and you're taking notes in preparation for your meeting, at the meeting, after the meeting, that is okay. And our records rules say that those kinds of records they're called transitory. You don't have to keep them once they're no longer useful to you. What that means is you can periodically get rid of those. You can get rid of them as soon as you don't need them. If you choose to keep those, though, and we did get a records request on something the commission had discussed, we would be asking you for those. So if you keep notes and keep retaining them, just make sure you know where they're at, they're organized, you could provide them if requested. I can't think of really many or any other records you might have. I suppose if you generate something as a commission member to assist you, again, share it with us, but I think those situations would be pretty rare. All right. So
Tisha, I actually do have one that I think I generated, and it was to wish Commissioner Krass good luck on his surgery. Would that actually count?
No, because that's really more, as like a accomplishment that he had.
He had surgery.
No,
Let's ask
because
him.
I would say you did that more because of your relationship with
Yeah.
him, not necessarily in your role as a commissioner. Okay. And we do sometimes need to ask our attorneys to help because sometimes the line can be a little blurry, but I would say in that case, no. That should be fine. That was not in your duties as a commissioner, more as a colleague and friend. Okay, so let's touch on the Code of Ethics real quick. Our new members, have you received a link to our Code of Ethics that you can recall? Maybe, maybe not. No. Okay, so I'll make sure and send that to you. We have a Code of Ethics document. We just ask you to read through it. It talks to you about not receiving gifts or gratuities for your service on the commission. It talks to you about some of the state ethics laws, and it covers some of the things I'm training on tonight. So I will make sure you have a link to that. And then these are just a couple of meeting expectations I wanted to just go over again with the new members, can be reminders for current members. So attendance is important to us, particularly for the Planning Commission, because you host public hearings and we have to notice those in the news. We have some notice requirements that have a financial impact and a planning impact. You're one of the first steps in, a multi-step process with these code changes. And so we want to make sure we have a quorum. So please, if you have planned travel, reach out to Stephen in advance and let him know, even if there's not a planned meeting on that day. If it's I would say if it's a multi-day trip, it might be worth mentioning, but particularly if it's on one of your Thursday meeting nights. We expect that you provide some kind of advance notice. If it's an immediate, unexpected issue, any kind of notice is appreciated, so you can be noted as excused at the beginning of the meeting. But if we don't hear from you, it's considered an unexcused absence. And if you have consecutive unexcused absences, there can be cause for removal. We have really great attendance from our commissioners in general, but I just want to share those expectations, and that goes for regular and alternate members. And then, as I mentioned, and as you see with Commissioner Zakharov tonight, the PPC rules do allow, they are a bit strict. They do say that if you're unable to be in the meeting room, that you can participate virtually. So it does imply, work travel, a medical issue, not just, I don't really want to feel like driving down to City Hall tonight. So there is definitely a meet in person expectation, but there's an allowance for virtual participation, and we ask that you let staff know. And like Commissioner Zakharov has done tonight, you can fully participate in the meeting. You can count toward the quorum. You can vote if you're a regular member or an alternate serving as a regular. We do ask you to try and keep your camera on the duration of the meeting. Okay, not any questions on that. The stipend program, I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of this program. It is a program that is available for anyone who is at or below 100% AMI. It provides it provides $50 per meeting to compensate you for transportation, childcare. There's no caveats on the funds, but this was something that was important to the city council and important to the city to offer to commissioners. So if this is a program, see if I have a second slide here. Oh, here's just the AMI slide, so you can take a quick look at that. If you are interested in applying for this program, we just ask you to attest to that you meet the income requirements. There's no documentation required on that side, so it's a very simple process, and then we issue checks a few times a year. So again, just want you to be aware of that, and I will include a link to that for our new commissioners when I send you the ethics information. And if anyone else is interested, the URL is listed below, or you can reach out to me. Okay, sorry, this is a little, my slide order here is a little disjointed, but we're going to go back to meeting procedures for just a moment here and just clarify alternates and regular members. So can you let me know who's an alternate in the room? Commissioner Adair, okay, and then the other commissioner is absent tonight. Okay, so just to so everyone's clear on this, because it has been a point of confusion in past years. So the goal, you have a 7-member planning commission. We want 7 members voting whenever possible. So if all 9 of you are here, 7 regular members and 2 alternates, only 7 people can vote. So in those cases, the alternates would not vote. But if even 1 regular commissioner is missing or 2, the alternates vote. So it can be helpful for the chair to clarify, and if you're an alternate and you're unsure, just ask before the vote is completed, am I voting or not? But the goal is you want to get to 7, but you can't go past 7, if that makes sense. The rules say that, providing input and feedback is always welcome, but once there's a formal motion on the floor, alternates don't make motions, don't debate or vote on motions unless they're filling in for a regular member. But as you see, so often there's some informal feedback being provided, and alternates are always welcome to participate in that. And so hopefully that was clear, and we appreciate our alternate members. All right, and then just a couple comments about your meeting agenda. It looks like you all got your meeting agenda. We do send our agendas out through a subscription, and I know the email can be problematic. It can sometimes get caught in people's junk emails. So here on screen this is the email your agenda links will come to. iCompass Tech is the product we use for all of our meeting publications. Did anyone have, I've heard there have been some issues receiving it. Anyone here have any issues?
I had one, but it was resolved.
You had, okay. So we've been kind of confirming we've got your emails correct. So if you can, whitelist, it sounds like you may have already done that. The other thing you can always do, and I didn't navigate to it on my slides here, but I'm guessing you found the Planning Commission landing page on the website. You've been able to navigate there. So your agendas are also published there. So we want to get you this email, but just know you can always go there to access them as well. And then a quick comment, and let's see if I do have a slide here. You may have noticed on your agendas, there's the little A, D, and I indicator that's next in parentheses, and that's designed to let you know if you're being asked to say anything. So if it's an informational item, usually that means your feedback isn't necessary or required, so you just can listen. D is there's likely to be some discussion, and A is when you're making your formal recommendations, like you will on the 27th. We do that to try and help you feel a little prepared. And then I'm sure you've seen we're attaching lots of exhibits. You guys definitely win for the biggest board and commission packets. You have lots of documents that you get to review. All right. So that was all I was planning to cover tonight. Thank you for your time. And this is an email address you can reach myself and the rest of the clerk's team at if you have questions about anything I covered tonight. Thank you so much.
All right, well, I think we all want to thank our fantastic city clerk, Tisha Gieser. Thank you. Okay. Looks like we're going to move along to our last item of regular business, and this is to discuss Title 18 proposed policy amendments. Kristen Leeson, our principal planner, will be presenting on this topic. So, Kristen, nice to see you whenever you're ready.
There we go. I apologize, it takes a minute to get my behemoth of a computer set up sometimes. All right, there we go. Hi. I am Kristen Leeson. I'm a principal planner with the Community Planning and Development Department. And we are here tonight to talk about more policy, Title 18 policy amendments. We're going to review it. I'll go through these, and then you all will discuss and provide feedback for me for our next meeting. No action will be taken tonight. So as a little information for our new members, welcome new members. We, in 2023, did a complete overhaul of our land use code. And when taking on a project that large, there is no way that we are going to get it perfect. As hard as we try, it won't be. So we are continually going through our code, reviewing it, trying to make sure, for quality control, and we have best practices in place and so forth. And so we have a big list, and we have broken these up into clarifying amendments and policy amendments. And we just had our public hearing on clarifying amendments. I believe many of you watched that meeting. Tonight, we're starting to talk about some more policy amendments. And we talked about some a few months ago and even late last year. We're going to bring those back so that you can see those again. But here are some new ones. So we really, we call these policy amendments, but the further we got into this, we didn't have a whole lot of policy questions for some of these. So this is just food for thought. Okay, so if you identify anything that needs to be clearer or additional changes that are needed or more information that you need, just let me know. Okay? So our first one that we're going to talk about is building height. And this is all of our zones, particularly our multifamily and commercial zones. We have a base building height, and you can build up to that building height, go for it. But if you want to go above that building height, there are other requirements necessary. So in our old code, we had a section, and you all received it in your packet, but there was a section that said if you want to go up to 45 feet, if you want to, or 50 feet, if you want to go to 58 feet, if you want to go to 65 feet, above and 65 feet, you have to do these steps for each one. And those regulations for those heights were intended, initially it was citywide, but then we wrote the central Issaquah standards. And we took all that out, and we said, if you want to go above our base height, then you have to participate in our density bonus program, which either gets the city a public benefit of either affordable housing or open space. But when we rewrote the code, that differentiation, that separation of the two, of the standards, wasn't included. And so right now, the way the code is written is that all of these standards that are here, plus the density bonus, apply to all the projects in Central Issaquah. So we're just trying to clear that up. So that was the misinterpretation. There was no intent included when we rewrote it, so we included an intent. We're including an intent in our proposed amendments. We added applicability, which that's the clarification piece, to say that this goes to zones outside of Central Issaquah that can go to a maximum height of 65 feet, outside of Central Issaquah, Talus, and Highlands, because they have their own, they're slightly different. So we added that to clarify which zones this applies to. The way it was written in the new code, it said approval criteria for up to 65 feet above the base building height. We don't have any criteria that allows buildings to go above 65 feet outside of those other areas, so we took that out. And then this one's a little different. We're no longer, by state law, we are no longer allowed to require structured parking in residential developments or developments with residential as part of it. So we took that out since we can't really require it anymore. Okay, next. This one has to do with home business, adult family home, and family daycare. So home businesses are intended to allow people to use businesses, to have businesses in their homes that are not actually permitted there by right. So someone wants to start selling insurance out of their house. There are requirements that they can only have so much parking, so many trips to and from their house a day. If they have signage, there are strict requirements on that. There's lots of requirements to come with it, okay? But what came up is that family daycare centers, there's a difference between daycare center and family daycare center. Family daycare center is much smaller. Family daycare centers and adult family homes are actually allowed by right. They are permitted in these single family zones. So we're clarifying that to take them out of the home business occupation because the regulations for these conflict a little bit. So we're taking that out. We clarified the purpose of the home business standards, which is that it's for uses not permitted by right, because that's not already there. And there were adult family home operations or standards at the bottom of the home business occupation. So we moved that back up to the daycare center and adult family home standards. So we just switched that around. Okay, we good? Okay, moving on. This is the last one for tonight. Development bonus program fee and lieu. So I mentioned in the beginning that we have a program in Central Issaquah where you can go above the base height if you participate in the development bonus program. Now, when we first started writing this, it was intended to get just more affordable housing, and that's still a piece of it, in that if you're doing a development with a residential component and you go above the base building height, you have to require, or you have to include affordable housing in your development. If you don't have room to do this, if you're going to do a fraction of it, you can pay a fee in lieu that goes into what's called our IHIP fund, which goes toward affordable housing. You can pay a fee in lieu. But the fact that this fee could go toward affordable housing was omitted from the update. It was in the original one, it was omitted from this one. So we're putting it back in. There's also a sentence in there that says that the community planning and development department director's responsibility it's that person's responsibility for the acquisition of open space, conservation easements, and development rights. But the way the code's written, that's really the council's authority. The director is not responsible for that, so we removed that sentence. Okay? Those are the only amendments I have tonight. We will be back we're not coming back on the 27th anymore. We'll be back on April 10th. The public hearing will be April 24th, and then it will hopefully head to the Planning, Development, and Environment Committee on May 6th, and then to the City Council for action on June 2nd. So back to food for thought. And any questions you may have too. Just throw them out there.
Thank you, Kristen. I'm looking for questions for Kristen. Okay. Give it a little bit of time. You never know. There might be one that comes up. Since we're waiting here, one thing I did have a question on, it's pretty straightforward. The home business standards, Kristen, I think I was getting a little caught up on some wording. So they're not, what we're dropping is not the home business permit, it's the site permit.
There's actually a home business permit that is required.
Therefore, home occupation permits are not necessary.
I think that got changed. We used to call home businesses home occupations, and I think that got changed in our update, so I should change the home business to, or home occupation to home business, whatever it is.
Okay. And then there was just one line in the issue for reason for change. Both uses are permitted uses by right in a single-family residential zones, with the exception of family daycares, which are not allowed in UV single-family and UV multifamily.
Right.
And then just down below in the actual code, it says family daycare centers must comply only when located, I imagine, in the UV. So that kind of.
They have to comply with the home occupation standards only when in the UV SF and UV MH zones.
But then the
Is it
above
mixed
one-
up the way I say it?
Right, but then it says with the exception of family daycares, which are not allowed in UVSF.
By right. So I will,
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
they're only allowed as home occupations, so I'll double check that language.
Okay, just a little confusing for me. Okay, I bought you guys some time. You got to help me out. Anybody have any questions? Anything, any feedback for Kristen on these important policy amendments? Vice Chair Patterson.
Just a clarifying question on the fee in lieu regarding affordable housing. Just a little bit more detail on what that means exactly. So they pay us money, it goes into a pot, and then that's used for affordable housing, like consultation? Like what does that mean?
Correct. So it could be, and I can talk to our city attorneys and see if we can beef this up a little bit, but it would be for the purchase of land for affordable housing, maintenance, preservation, or affordable housing itself.
Okay, going once. Commissioner Adair.
I have a question about the daycare amendment where it says 7B, that a daycare center, 7C, the adult family home must have no more than 6 residents. An adult family home may provide services up to 8 adults upon approval. So is that saying that's the exception would be that if they have approval? So that might be something that could be clarified a little more.
Yes, okay, and that's exactly the way it's written in the state law. So I'll see if I can clarify it more. Okay.
I don't want to pick on, but I thought I saw a hand, Commissioner
Oh.
Melinda Irwin. please?
You did, thank you. I did have a concern about the affordable housing fee in lieu in terms of what the overall intent is of that. My concern as I hear this and not have a whole bunch of information, which is someone's ability to kind of, I guess, buy a consideration in order to, for affordable housing, where the intent may not be in good faith. So have a little bit of a concern there, but not a lot of understanding of it as of yet.
So any time that the fee in lieu is used, city council has to approve it, and it has to meet the intent of the code.
Thank you.
Yeah, those are great. Thank you. All right, I'll say it one more time. Going once, going twice. Okay.
Thank you.
Got off lightly tonight, Kristen. You should have seen your poor colleague Valerie getting grilled up here for like an hour.
I watched.
Okay.
there.
Well, thank you, Kristen. Yeah, that takes it for regular business this evening. We're going to move to city council updates. So staff, if you have any updates, please go ahead.
Chair Voice, I just have a couple of updates for you. So earlier this week, City Council reviewed the light rail vision and guiding principles draft. Thomas presented to City Council and provided a lot of great feedback. And so that's going to be returning to full City Council for tentative approval in April. Next week, City Council is going to be taking a look at the comprehensive plan docket, and they'll also be getting a update from staff on permitting process improvements and reporting on permit timelines. So if you're interested in learning more about that, the material should be available now. That's it for City Council updates.
Okay, moving right along. Other business and announcements. So are there any updates to the calendar or other business announcements from staff?
Just a couple of updates. We'll be looking at tree code at a few different dates, just slightly adjusted on the calendar. And then we'll be holding 2 public hearings on March 27th. Those are the biggest updates to the calendar.
All right, 2 public hearings, next meeting. Okay, well, that takes care of our announcements.
I have one quick announcement. Chair Voice, I was asked to provide just a quick update on the Pioneer Program, and thus far we have one interested party in active permit as part of the program, but no active land use or building permits associated with the Pioneer Program that are currently in the queue.
That's great, the Pioneer Program. That was some of the work we did with the EVC, I believe,
Correct.
last year.
Yes.
So, yeah, again, some of the work that we were able to share with the Economic Vitality Commission, it's great to hear there's a little bit of movement. So fantastic. Okay, is that all our updates?
That's it from staff.
Okay, well, thank you, Stephen, and I want to thank all our staff tonight. Kristen, good night. Minnie, Stephen, Tisha, it's great to see you. We don't get to see you often, so always a pleasure. And obviously, we want to thank Valerie for her hard work this evening. I do also want to say, again, looking forward to working with our new commissioners. Had a great first outing, our first evening. And, yeah, I think that's it. If anyone has anything to say for the good of the order or anything in general, we'll open it up. We'll leave it open for a few seconds. No takers? Okay. We'll adjourn this meeting of the Planning Policy Commission at 8:29 p.m. Good night.